Hello and welcome to Indian Standard Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan. My guest today is Hein Kiessling, a German scholar and analyst and author of a new book on Pakistan's ISI, Faith, Unity, Discipline, the ISI of Pakistan. Hein Kiessling, welcome to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you.
The inter-services intelligence is much talked about in India. We talk about it as an institution within Pakistan that has been involved over the past many years, 2 decades or more, in the sponsorship of all kinds of terrorist acts against India, sponsoring terrorist organizations of one kind or the other. The ISI, in its own self-narrative, describes itself as, or would describe itself as an institution or an agency that is involved in the frontline battle against terror. And in the United States, perhaps you have people, and in the Western world, people who look at the ISI both as an ally in the fight against terror, as well as an institution or an agency that promotes terrorism of one kind or the other. You've written perhaps the only book that exists in the world on the ISI. This makes you a subject of great interest for us here in India. And my first question to you will be, how did a German scholar like yourself pick this fascinating topic? How did you end up writing a book on the ISI?
A very good question, Siddharth. And I was asked this question, of course, a few times over the last months after the book came out, after the book was published. You know already I lived and worked in Pakistan for 13 years, from the years of 89 till 2002.
Primarily in Islamabad, or?
No, the first, I call that my learning time, the first 3.5 years in Quetta, Balochistan, in Quetta at Lorelei, and then 9 years in Islamabad.
This is from 1989 onwards, huh?
89 onwards, from
onwards.
Spring 89 till spring 2002.
Right.
And I was the representative of a German political foundation. So naturally, my work was on a political level. And I opened up our office in Islamabad, and I was able to get contact to the political, military, and intelligence elite in Islamabad and in Pakistan. So that was the basis for the book. Now, in 2002, I had to retire compulsory. I had reached the age time. And before coming to Pakistan, I was posted 5 years in the South Pacific. So altogether, I came back to Germany after 18 years, right, to my own home country. And I didn't have a network there anymore, so I started thinking what to do. And as you know, in 2003, 2004, so 2003 I was at home and was recovering, I was sick. But in 2004 I survived again and was trying to do something, and it was the rebirth at that time of the Taliban, of the new Taliban. You know, the Taliban came up in 94, yes, and then, after 9/11 they got finished, but in 2004 they came up again, the rebirth of the Taliban, up till today. And again, there was a lot of writing in the media, the international media, about Afghanistan, Pakistan, and the ISI. And I found out, in particular, about the ISI, there was not much exact knowledge. Of course, they know, in the 80s, the ISI was the leading force in defeating the Soviets, not the CIA. It was the ISI who did it. Of course, with the help from
American money and American help, yeah.
Saudi Arabian money and other finances and help, of course. But it was the ISI controlling the Mujahideen time, controlling the whole development then. Now there was the new time and a lot of reporting again about the ISI, and a lot of things was wrong. May I give you an example?
Sure.
May I tell you? For example, the personal strength of the ISI. You could read in the main media in the West, there was a guess between 20,000 ISI staff and 50,000. Believe it or not, in one German weekly paper, I could once read 120,000 ISI people, staff. And I started thinking that can't be correct. The German intelligence agency BND has 6,000. It's not a secret. You can Google that out. Even 6,000. How can an intelligence agency from Pakistan have so many? So the most solid information in one paper I read was 10,000. No. So I tried to go into research there first to find that, and I found out in 2004 the ISI had 3,500, BND had 6,000, and if I may say so, in your country, IAW had 7,000. But there was a writing, you know, in 10,000, 20,000. And that was one of the points where I said, well, you know better, and you know so many, and you are still in contact with them. Let's try to write a book about them. And that's how it all started in 2004.
Right.
So from 2004 on, I was retired at least twice a year, and not only for a few days, for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, I came over to Pakistan, very often also to India. So I had 2 passports at that time, and they were full with Pakistani and India visas.
Right.
And
did the Pakistani authorities, and in particular the people that you met on your visits to Pakistan, I would presume would also have included leading personnel from the military, from the political establishment, from the intelligence even. Were they aware that you were researching for a book on the ISI?
Oh, very good question. I decided from the beginning, you know, to play with open cards.
Okay.
How can you, a lot of them were already my friends. And how can I come again, you know, and then play a foolish game by asking, you know, what is now going on there? And not only asking what is the political development now, specific questions about the intelligence. So in 2004, I went to the Directorate General of the ISI, that's the official, near to the Apara market in Islamabad, and was known to them. For me, knowing the right, pulling the right strings, you know, it was relatively easy to get access. And I met the second important man within the ISI, which is normally always the head of analysis, 2-star general. The DG is always a 3-star general. And I said, I have this idea, and I plan to write that. Now, in 2004, there was still not much written with, about the ISI. There was still nothing, almost nothing in the internet. It all started very fast then, after, you know, from 2005 on. But in 2004, for example, I couldn't get even a list of former DG ISIs, or former heads of the ISI. You know, ISI was founded in 48, so there were already a dozen there. So
by an English officer, right? By a British officer?
An Australian, but a member of the British Indian Army, and a 3-star general by the name of Cawthorne, who later on became Australia's first ambassador in Pakistan. He was then ambassador in Pakistan after retiring from the military. Was a close friend of Ayub Khan and the first president there, and opted for the Pakistan after. Yes. So I asked the ISI for a list, and the funny thing was happening at that time. It was promised to give me a list, and they did it. After a week, I got it via the embassy, and at that time, in 2004, the name of General Ziauddin, you know, was still out of that. So he was still so much disliked that they kept it out. So I told them, don't fool around with me, and then no need for me to come to you anymore. So that was it. But I played open cards. I all told them. And I never faced any objection.
Okay. Now, explain for the benefit of our viewers, in many ways, the unique nature of the ISI as an institution, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the Indian and Pakistani military as they evolved after 1947, you have military intelligence, you have naval intelligence, you have Air Force intelligence. A lot of the other command structures and institutions are virtually identical. The ISI is something unique and very, very different in that sense. What are the origins of the ISI as an entity distinct from military intelligence, which is something that one encounters in every army? What was the role envisaged by the creators of the ISI at the time in 1948? How did they see the rationale for this institution, and how did they imagine it would evolve?
First of all, each new state thinks he needs an intelligence agency. And of course, that's the way how life is. Military intelligence, MI as it is called, is mainly for intelligence for the battlefield, over the battlefield. Right. The other intelligence, one level higher, includes already, you know, elements from abroad, about other countries, political decisions done over there, the ideas and so on. So it was quite clear for the founders of Pakistan that they needed a functioning intelligence agency.
Actually, I need to rephrase the question.
Yeah.
The need for a intelligence agency that handles, in particular, external intelligence is obvious, right?
Yeah.
But the decision to create this body and house it within the army is what is in many ways unique, right? I mean, if you look at other major countries, India, Britain, the United States, you'd be hard pressed to find a parallel for where the external agency, intelligence agency, comes under military command rather than being an autonomous, or rather than being an institution that comes under the civilian government. Right? So we're talking of a time when Pakistan was still not beholden to the generals, and yet the ISI gets created in that particular manner.
But from 1948, Pakistan was more or less in the hand of the military. Otherwise, in my mind, without the Pakistan military, Pakistan in the present form would not exist, because when Muhammad Ali Jinnah was gone and when Liaquat was assassinated, there was no political leadership anymore being able to keep it together and to have a vision until Bhutto came for this period. So it was the military calling the shot. Now, Ayub Khan did that very well. It was quite clear to them. And you know, Pakistan was supported, they established a partition. The British were in favor of partition. They were, you know, close to Pakistan. And the British immediately realized there is need for an intelligence, and I have written it in my book. There was a strong British interest to have an intelligence agency with their friend within Pakistan, because, you know, the great game was going on.
Politics,
yes, was going on. They needed now to look again, you know, to Central Asia, to the east, and that's why they gave a helping hand to Pakistan to build up, and that is why Cawthorne, and he was an excellent, experienced, intelligent officer, got the job, you know, to that, and he did it very well. By the way, in the first crew, he took a lot. There was a lot of intake of former Indian IB personnel, which had opted for Pakistan and were there now, and they were the pillars, the strong bones, you know. It was the first decade. And as I said, and then, of course, you know, at the beginning, the ISI was a relatively small agency, not well equipped. The big time for the ISI began, you know, when in December '79. That was the time when the
Soviet invasion of Afghanistan.
Yeah, because they were, you know, it was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto who the ISI was very much down after the loss of East Pakistan, demoralized, and this was luckily and funnily Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He gave them more money. He made the DG ISI, who was maximum a 2-star general, up to a 3-star general, and gave them some more confidence. But it was still and the spectrum of work, of course, extended. You know, it was first very small, and they expanded, but still relatively small until '79, and then the golden time happened.
If we look to the present period, it's not uncommon to encounter people in Pakistan or analysts around the world who know Pakistan who would describe the ISI as a state within a state. You've heard that phrase, people use it all the time, casually, which in a way mirrors the larger-than-life role of the army within Pakistan. So my question to you is, just as the army and the chief of army staff in Pakistan notionally and legally is under the government of the day, but in reality has a much larger political footprint. How accurate would the argument be if one were to say that the ISI, or rather, I want to understand, to what extent does the ISI function as an autonomous unit within the army? Could you think of a situation where the army chief might not be fully in control of what the ISI does, or does that never happen?
That will never happen,
Okay.
has never happened,
Okay.
will never happen. The ISI is in major, military personnel there.
Yeah.
A lot of ISI officers are going back after a time of special duty, going back. That finished a little bit in the new development. Some officers stay then when they join the ISI, stay there for the rest of the period years. But the DG ISI is always first looking not to the prime minister,
Right.
to whom he should
Army-
report
yes,
first.
yeah.
He decides what he reports, but he looks straight to the army chief.
right.
That is, an army chief who is not full of control of the ISI.
Yeah.
I think it never happens.
So if we use the phrase state within a state for the ISI, that is only insofar as the Pakistani army is a state within a state, right? So there's never a situation where the ISI could be acting in a manner that the army doesn't know, or do you think the army maintains a veneer, what they call plausible deniability? Does it maybe suits the army chief sometimes in his conversations with others to say, well, that's the ISI?
I don't think that the army chief even would say that.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. And the main interest of the ISI in our days is, of course, in two directions: security and to some part foreign affairs. They are never interested, for example, in the economy. That they leave and foreign policy to countries they don't have
Yeah.
special interest.
Right.
But as far as Pakistan's Afghanistan policy and Pakistan Indian policy is concerned,
Iran too, perhaps?
to some extent, yes, to some extent. But I think in such fields like Iran, there is not much disagreement between the politicians and the.
Right.
By the way, very often, politicians in Pakistan told me, we had to do that under pressure from the army. Very often it was they were of the same opinion to do that. So the army is looking after Afghanistan policy, special reasons, and the army is looking after the Indian policy, of course.
Right. If I turn to the ISI's current policy towards India, we read it here as one of unremitting hostility. To what extent, what drives the ISI's corporate or institutional, policy towards India? Or is that the wrong question?
No,
Should we be asking what the army's policy is? Pakistani army's policy.
I would say the policy of GHQ and ISI.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is it.
So is it ideologically driven? Is it driven by the desire to maintain their status quo position within Pakistani society? What is it that makes Pakistani policy, GHQ and ISI's policy towards India what it is?
That is one of the reasons, of course. I mean, one of the biggest problems of the German army, called Bundeswehr, after the end of the Cold War was that there was all of a sudden no enemy anymore. Of course, they were still a member of NATO, but the commanding generals, didn't have any battle experience anymore, and there was always, all of a sudden, no enemy anymore. And there, ISAF came as a relief in Apostolf, as a relief to them. That is valid, and that is how it is with every army, of course. But on the other hand, don't forget, over all the decades before, Pakistan army had the first problem keeping Pakistan together. After the shock, after 72, after Bangladesh was born. So keeping Pakistan together, and they realized they need a friendly neighbor in the West, Afghanistan, which was one and still is up till today one of the biggest problems, because the Afghans don't like the Punjabis, And the other problem was, of course, Kashmir. That was, taken over after partition. They feel betrayed of Kashmir. Bringing home the brothers, the religious brothers, was always also in their heart. And then, of course, for strategic reasons, too.
Right.
And that was since partition, over all the time there. And as I said before, and keeping Pakistan together. I am convinced without the Pakistan military, Pakistan would not exist in present form anymore. And there was, of course, we speak about Afghanistan. There is now the issue, the burning issues right now, Kashmir and Balochistan. And why Balochistan? Because there was, of course, and is a movement for independence in Balochistan. For the first time, I heard the phrase of Punjabi colonialism.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, Balochistan is strategically an important province, you know, places Gwadar and so on. The project of the Chinese-Pakistan Economic Corridor and so on will nur work, and the Chinese demand that there is security in Balochistan. And that is why Balochistan right now is more or less controlled by the army.
Right.
Yeah, and by the ISI.
Right.
These are the 2 points. And from time to time, if there is a change in government and the military has a feeling that the political leadership is trying to come closer to India, you say, yes, okay, we agree with that, but only if there is some progress in the Kashmir issue. And that is, you know, if that is not the case, or if they feel, then they start again. And that's how it happened 3 years ago, you know. When,
That's right. Can you think of a scenario or a situation where the ISI may end its sponsorship of various anti-Indian terrorist groups in the same way that it broke its links with, say, the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi or the Sipahi Sahaba, which earlier were known to have links with the ISI? Can you imagine under what circumstances that might happen?
I can imagine everything, but it might take time. And the world is changing. I am now 80 years old, you know, when I look back what happened in Europe, in my country, not always positive, but it has changed a lot. As far as the Kashmir issue is concerned, I see Kashmir, it is after the Palestine conflict, the strongest conflict, and very, very, very difficult, unless there is Kashmir can be resolved the problem in a short time on the basis of status quo.
Right.
But the Pakistanis are not willing to do that. They would lose face and they, okay. So I think it will only be solved over the period of the next 2 decades, probably in a way like what happened in Europe, you know, the way. And I hope that then both India and Pakistan are not making the mistakes the European countries have done.
Right. Yeah. We're almost out of time, but in the last minute that we have, it's often heard as a recommendation in Track 2 meetings, where retired intelligence personnel often take part, that one confidence-building measure that India and Pakistan could engage in is for the intelligence services or agencies of the 2 countries, RAW and the ISI, to have regular interactions. Given your understanding of the ISI, do you think that is a worthwhile tack to pursue? Of
course, why not? I remember I learned a lot from the late Mr. Dixit, who always said to me when I asked him, he came over, and not as track 2, as track 1.5, as we called it. I was very much in my years involved in that. And he said, you know, I always tell our Prime Minister and our security advisor, let us talk with them. That will not do any harm. And doing that on the intelligence level, of course not to the public, but the public might know there is something going on. I see it in a very positive way, and I think it is possible. Yes, of course.
Right. We're completely out of time. So on that note, Hein Kiessling, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you so much for being with us on Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Indian Standard Time. Thank you for watching, and do join us again next week with another guest.